Good morning, everyone. It's first thing in the morning here at my house, and we're getting ready to have pancakes for breakfast. So I thought, why not do my video on pancakes? If you're in my culinary arts class, you know that we made 3 different kinds of pancakes. One that used vinegar, one that used buttermilk, and one that was more of a old-fashioned traditional pancake, which is kind of what I'm making today. So when we start our pancakes, we always start with flour. There's 3 cups of flour in here. I usually make a really big batch of pancakes. We like to have leftovers, something to eat for breakfast for a couple days. Pancakes are a big favorite at our house. So 3 cups of flour for this recipe. And then you're going to add the rest of your dry ingredients. So I like to have a little bit of sugar. Now, different recipes will call for a different amount of sugar. I put in a little more than other recipes call for. This is about 1/4 cup. Some recipes call for just a couple tablespoons, so that's up to you. Okay, you can kind of adjust that to your taste. Then we have our leavening agent, which is what makes them fluffy. And in this case, that's baking powder. There are about 7 teaspoons of baking powder in here. Plus, I just dumped my salt in here too. There's about 2 teaspoons of salt. So 7 teaspoons of baking powder, 2 teaspoons of salt. Okay. Okay, so those are all of our dry ingredients. So we mix the dry ingredients together. I just use a fork. I mean, you don't need a mixer, certainly. You can use a whisk if you want, but a fork will do just fine. So just kind of toss them together. And then you can create a well. That means like a divot, a big divot in the middle of your flour and dry ingredients, because you're going to put your wet ingredients in there. Okay, now wet ingredients means eggs. I like to put vanilla in my pancakes. Not every recipe calls for vanilla. And butter and milk. So we're going to start with our eggs. There are 2 eggs in this recipe. 1, 2. I like to have garbage nearby. I'm usually actually working right above where my garbage bin is. If you're like far away from your garbage bin, you don't want to be going back and forth all the time, you could have a little bucket with just an old Walmart bag or something in it, and then it'll be right next to you, and then you just pull the bag out and throw it away when you're all done. That way you don't waste time and possibly dribbling or dropping garbage stuff all over the floor. So that just makes it a little easier. Okay, so we have eggs. I'm just going to whisk them a little bit in there before I add the rest of the ingredients. Okay, so we have our eggs in there, and I'm going to add about 2 teaspoons of vanilla. You can add more or less depending on your preference. Okay, then we have about 3 tablespoons of melted butter. Okay, so we're going to put that in there. Okay. And again, you can always add more or less melted butter if you feel like you really like that buttery texture. We always put butter on our pancakes anyway, so I don't usually go too crazy with it. And then our milk. So we have 2.5 cups of milk here that I'm going to kind of start adding in there as I mix. Okay. Okay. Once you get it all in there, then you can start mixing in earnest, meaning really getting in there and getting everything mixed together. Okay. And the focus on, as far as mixing, isn't necessarily to make it lump free. It's going to be lumpy. Pancake batter has lumps in it, and that's okay. It's just to make sure that everything is incorporated. Everything gets wet. Everything touches everything else, so to speak. Okay, so you want one uniform look, one uniform texture. There's no like dry pockets of flour or anything like that. So you're not mixing it until you're like trying to kill it or anything. You're just trying to make it all one. So there, I think that's actually pretty good. Let's have a look at it. Okay. Yeah, yep, okay. So the next step will be obviously to make our pancakes. So I'll meet you over by the griddle.